It is time for North Korea to realize that the denuclearization is its only acceptable future. The United Nations Security Council recently held 2 unanimous 15-0 votes adopting hard-hitting resolutions against North Korea, and I want to thank China and Russia for joining the vote to impose sanctions, along with all of the other members of the Security Council. Thank you to all involved. But we must do much more.
President Trump right there moments ago thanking 2 of North Korea's biggest benefactors, Russia and China, for voting to put tougher UN sanctions on the rogue regime, while not mincing words when it comes to the U.S. defending itself against North Korea, threatening to annihilate it, which neither China or Russia seem to want. Kevin Peraino was the author of A Force So Swift, Mao, Truman, and the Birth of Modern China, 1949. And he joins me now here in studio. Thank you so much for talking to us. Russia and China are 2 major players here. Now, for the very first time, they are going to be imposing the most toughest sanctions. However, it almost seems as if Kim Jong-un is empowered by this. Are these sanctions, is this pressure put on by China enough to get him to finally
Well, I thought it was interesting
listen?
in the speech, and the speech that Trump just gave, and I think that some of the rhetoric, we will totally destroy North Korea, we could totally destroy North Korea, those threats were aimed at China. They weren't aimed so much at North Korea. They were aimed at trying to get China to take action, because the last thing that China wants is North Korea to be totally destroyed. And that's something that I touch on my book. It's one of these historical lessons that you can't separate China policy from North Korea policy. These 2 countries are looking at each other all the time. And in 1949, this year that I'm looking at, North Korea was watching Mao's revolution in China very carefully, and Kim Il-sung was emboldened by this. I think today also Pyongyang is watching Beijing. Yeah,
the question is whether to confront or engage with China.
That's the biggest question, and I think some of the the debate about the actual rhetoric, the Rocket Man thing, misses this. That there's a really substantive debate about whether you confront or engage Beijing, and it's not something that just started. It's something that's been going on now for 70 years and more, and it's something that President Truman, Dean Acheson, as Secretary of State, had to try to figure out back then.
You know, you mentioned something that's been going on for 70 years or so. Something that's been going on are these missile tests. That is a blatant slap in the face to the entire world. And I brought this up yesterday, and coincidentally today it comes out that the U.S. is actually considering shooting down these missiles that aren't necessarily targeted at U.S. territory, but nonetheless shooting them down to send a message to Kim Jong-un. He cannot continue to ignore the world's pressure on him ending his nuclear weapons program. Is that a good idea, to shoot them down and send a message?
Well, I think Defense Secretary Mattis said the other day, he talked about the danger of miscalculation being very high. I think the kind of shooting down a missile like that is the kind of thing that could lead to, a miscalculation. It's something, and that's, one of the lessons of the First Korean War is that both sides were always misunderstanding each other. They were never quite, on the same page. And I think that's the kind of thing that can lead to the danger of miscalculation. And, the Korean War, nobody really wanted the Korean War except for Kim Jong-un, and nobody wants another one. And that's kind of the scary thing, is because, none of the great powers wanted it. Americans, this is right after World War II, Americans just wanted to go to the movies and drink Coke, as one American diplomat said. They didn't want to, they weren't interested in another foreign conflict. And Stalin and Mao and China didn't really want that either. Anyway.
Defense Secretary James Mattis said the following, that North Korea is intentionally doing provocations that seem to press against the envelope for just how far they can push. Do we have that sound? Okay, go ahead and roll it.
They are intentionally doing provocations that seem to press against the envelope for just how far can they push without going over some kind of a line in their minds that would make them vulnerable.
Now, if we were to go ahead and do this, the problem, the question, the concern is putting those at risk in Seoul. There are tens of thousands that potentially could be at risk of losing their lives if North Korea were to then counterattack. Mattis says that the U.S. military is prepared to protect against any casualties, but doesn't necessarily go into detail. How would we do that?
Well, I don't know, and I don't think anybody knows, and that's the problem. That's this issue. I think part of the rhetoric of the speech today, the president frames it as a problem to be solved. And one of the quotes I like from Truman's Secretary of State, he said, "Foreign policy problems aren't like headaches. You can't take a pill and make them go away. They're more like the pain of earning a living."
Right.
And I think Kim Jong-un is that kind of pain. It's like the pain of earning a living. It's something that will take time. It's not going to be resolved overnight.
Kevin Peraino, great to have you, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Jill.